Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. Welcome everybody to the weekly show. Again, this is Heather right here, and she is my good friend from Atlanta, and she is a meeting planner, Heather Herrig. She's been part of the meetings and events industry since 2005. She loves every aspect of what's going on into creating amazing, inclusive, and engaging experiences because it takes a whole lot of different parts and pieces. But more importantly, she is a mom and one who's recently found herself on the personal side of the dietary needs question. Hi, Heather. How are you?
Hi, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Now, I want to start with what does it mean? What do we mean by the dietary needs question?
So we've all seen it, right?
Right.
If we're registering for an event or if we're producing an event and are having other guests register for us, that do you have any dietary restrictions or allergies or, any needs at all? We've all seen it. And we do our best with that question to capture the information that we need to create that safe and inclusive experience that you referenced. So it's that key question, do you have any needs we can assist with?
Right.
So it's the big one.
And that's the host asking their guests that question. And it's amazing how there's so many different ways that people do it.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen just open-ended, like, let us know if you have any needs. And I've seen very, very detailed, which is fantastic. Ideally, it's tiered so that if you say yes or no, it leads you down a path.
Right.
But it comes in all shapes and sizes.
It does. Now, okay. So now that we know what that means, explain to us what experience you just had.
Okay.
That puts you on the other side of that question.
So now I'm on the other side of the question. So previously, as a meeting professional, I've been the one asking. I've been the one taking that information in order to create that safe experience. We had a family scare recently, and very, very suddenly, very quickly, because it happens very fast, our daughter had an anaphylactic reaction. She's almost 8 years old. And I will preface this by saying, because I think this is important too, this is a little off script. I have her permission to be speaking about this. I think even at 8, it's really important that you control your digital footprint. So I have her complete permission to be talking about this, to use her photo. I have permission to use her name, but I probably won't if I don't have to. But she's almost 8 years old, and we were enjoying a family dinner together. My husband is a tremendous cook, and we recently started growing some basil and rosemary and mint in our garden. So he was super excited to make his own pesto sauce, as were we all very excited to enjoy this pesto. And I'll kind of take you through the story because I think it's really important to be observing what happened. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'll kind of take you through it step by step, what I was experiencing really as a mom in this situation. So we all sit down to dinner. With one bite, my daughter starts complaining that she feels like she's choking. And she is, keep in mind, she's 7. So she's using the language she has. She's using kind of the sensory perception that she has. And she's explaining that she feels like something's caught in her throat, that some of the pasta is stuck in her throat. So my mom brain is thinking, okay, she's kind of choking here. It felt urgent right away. It felt like she was in distress right away. So she starts really complaining, really kind of getting upset that something's stuck in her throat. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go to the bathroom. Let's see if we can kind of work this out. She's breathing. So I'm not thinking it's, full out Heimlich time, but she's in distress. So we make our way to the bathroom. She vomits on the way, but I'm thinking, okay, her body's doing what it's supposed to do in this kind of a situation. She's trying to work it out. And we get to the bathroom and it's still there. It's definitely not resolving itself. And I mean, and again, this is kind of happening in seconds, the narrative is definitely longer than the actual experience. So I'm very fortunate that my sister is in pediatric medicine. She's a doctor. Call her with anything really. And I say, hey, something's going on here. And I knew this was not I knew something was wrong. I said, do I take her in? She's having difficulty swallowing this. I don't know if she's choking. I don't know if she's aspirating something. What do I do? And she's like, well, sounds like she's, got an open passageway. I don't want to tell you not to take her. If you feel like you do, take her. But, maybe, see how she does for the next minute or so and call me back. So we're kind of observing it's not getting any better. She's really upset. And my husband steps in and it's dad time. He's like, just sit with me. Let's relax. Cause he was thinking maybe she was just so upset that it was kind of feeling stuck still that she just needed to kind of have a moment.
Right.
And so she comes onto the couch. We turn back on we had a movie going too earlier, Finding Dory. So we turn it back on and maybe 10 seconds goes by and I say, pause it. I said, she is wheezing something is very wrong here. I could hear her really having a hard time. And so we get up again, she's itching. I say what's going on? Can you show me show me your stomach? Covered in hives, starting to get covered in hives. I said, ER time, let's go. I grabbed some Benadryl on the way out of the door, called my sister again. I said, 1 or 2. And she said, just take 1. That's the recommended dose. Just take 1. Keep me posted. I knew at this point we were in a serious situation and we're not very far. It wouldn't have been necessary to call an ambulance. Again, she wasn't in complete, shutdown mode yet. Gave her Benadryl. We were at the ER within 5-7 minutes, get her admitted. Just in that short amount of time from taking that 1 Benadryl to when we get there, she was able to vomit the rest of everything up. I mean, so you could tell there was a big, it was not getting through. And just to think of her going through that and not knowing what's going on with her body, it was just super scary. And then, kind of went from there and the medical team took over and got everything.
Did they take her back immediately?
Not immediately because they could tell that she was okay. And with COVID, they're a little bit slower on the intake process, but we were in very quickly.
Okay. And so that whole, what was that, 30 minutes? Was that?
Maybe not even, maybe 20. Wow. I mean, but It was first bite. And I think this is what's really important. Part of what I think is really important for us as professionals who could be in this situation. Mm-hmm. Adults are experiencing this kind of novel onset all the time. One of my mom's best friends was on a cruise, maybe after retirement or around that retirement age.
Right.
And had an experience with shellfish, had never in her life had any issues with shellfish. So I think too, not to stray too far off, but just to kind of make this point that people might say to that dietary needs question, they might say, I don't have anything. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to not be on guard, have to not be labeling, have to not be understanding what's in the food you serve, because anything can happen. So this was the first bite and her body went into that anaphylactic drive and just started. Wow. And my sister kind of explained it from a medical perspective later. We talked a little bit, we were talking all night. And, other things that were happening that I would not have associated with anaphylaxis, because I think for a lot of us, we think your throat closes.
Right.
I'm going to be completely open and honest. That's really what I thought it was at first. Before this happened to us and our family, before I witnessed it firsthand, I thought it was, I can't breathe kind of a situation.
Right.
It's multi-systemic is what Courtney called it, my sister.
Yep.
And I mean, this is, with her, the hives, and that immune response, the vomiting. And when we had a follow-up appointment with her pediatrician, she said, that's a symptom that a lot of people miss. That's actually, it didn't have anything to do with food getting stuck. That is part of the reaction is vomiting. It's the gastro system's involved. Yep. Vascular, her lips were so swollen and red and her eyes were bloodshot. I mean, everything was happening to her poor little body. And it's not what you think. It's definitely not what you think.
Well, and it is, and that's the one thing I think is important is anaphylaxis is a multi-system bodily system. So, and when they added the word eating to the Americans with Disabilities Act back in 2008, but they also added all of our bodily functions. So our immune system, our digestive tract, our skin, I don't know how to say that word, medical terminology of it, but all of those things, that's what anaphylaxis combines. Because you might get itchy by eating something, or you might get something, your lips swelling a little bit, or your tongue tingling, but all of those together, she literally was having an anaphylactic shock.
Was like her body was freaking out.
Wow.
That's the best way to put it.
And you had never served her pine nuts before?
Well, I mean, we were kind of thinking about, at that point we had no idea what was going on, what is happening to our child, and we kind of went through, well, at least we were having a meal that we prepared. We knew exactly what went into it, that it was a very, small ingredient meal. And I kind of was like Googling on the way to the hospital. And basil, there's been like 2 confirmed cases in the history of the world of people with basil. I was like, I'm going to guess it's not that. But she ate probably like 3 Nutella sandwiches that week. She's a fantastic, great eater. Pistachios, almonds, oh my gosh, cashews, like you name it, the tree nuts are going in the body. And so I'm pretty sure we've never had, pine nuts is not a common ingredient here in the US. So I really think that's probably the first time she's been introduced to it. And it was like, whew, not having it.
And since then she's been tested.
Yep. So we're going through all kind of the follow-up with her allergist. And when it's a child and it involves the education system, and I think this really kind of pulls us back to the part of taking care of people at your meetings and events. I have to let her go to school every day and trust, because we're creating a medical plan with our allergist, with her pediatrician, with the school. This is essentially a 7-year-old's version of the dietary needs question. I have to fill out all this paperwork. And I'm like, it's very detailed at this level. We should be doing more capturing information. It doesn't have to be like crazy, the amount of forms I've had to fill out so far. It doesn't have to be to that extent. Right. But there's more we should be asking to make sure that we are prepared to care for somebody if they're having an issue on site. But so we're kind of going through all the aftermath right now, all the forms, all the visits, all the because her poor little body went through so much. We had to, first of all, make sure it was resetting properly. And I just, it's just been kind of a whirlwind, to be honest, the last few weeks. It's just happened.
Wow. And you've got epinephrine now as a prescription, right?
Yep, we do. And, the whole family practiced. They provide a test pen, which is fantastic, so that you can test as many times as you want to feel comfortable. We wanted her to feel comfortable doing it. We wanted all of us to feel comfortable doing it. But it was kind of funny because we started practicing and, she practiced on herself. And then our daughter was going to practice next. She practiced on Hadley. And I was like, okay, let's not practice on the daughter because she is going to have all these bruises on her thigh before we're done. So let's just pretend. But we all practiced as a family. I know that if one of the questions I asked, for example, and I've asked this, for whatever, how long, but if people do have an allergy, I always ask if they carry an EpiPen. There is a certification involved. We have kind of a, it's not like anyone can just do it. But if somebody's having a life-threatening event, by all means, save their life. But we've all practiced. We all feel very comfortable with the EpiPen now. But I know, and I think that when you're in this role and you take care of people in this way, now you're on the other side and you're like, oh my goodness, this is scary. It is scary. And I picked up my phone because I was going to look for a picture, but at the the FACES conference, which is run by the Food Allergy Center at Feinstein School of Medicine up in Chicago, they had us practicing on oranges and grapefruits, right? Yeah. And it's amazing how you think. And I've actually, you don't have to jab it hard, but it is something definitely. There's 2 comments in here. Annette Fazio, my friend, one of her doctors told her vomiting was not allergic reaction. He clearly didn't have a clue. So, you do know it. And then Brian, thank you, Brian, for joining us today. He witnessed my 18-year-old going into anaphylactic shock from accidentally eating a dessert with traces of peanuts.
He had no idea, rashes as usual, but blood pressure dropped. He went pale, could not talk. And unfortunately, he passed away 20 minutes after consumption. And Brian, I reiterate your story a lot in some of my speeches to meeting planners as well, because it can happen at any time. And Heather is the proof of, Heather talking about it. And then also I don't remember who it was that had that shellfish allergy. You can get allergies without even knowing it, right? All of a sudden. Brian, thank you for what you do in this industry and promoting the awareness. His 3 boys actually have peanut allergies. But so how has, as a meeting professional, and you and I have talked about this, we're putting a course together on how to design event registration systems to collect this information. More to come on that. But what are you going to do differently, going forward, asking the questions and then also fulfilling the needs?
I think that, and this is not to, say anything about myself. It's because of knowing amazing professionals like you and being very involved in this industry that I personally wouldn't change a thing about how I request information, work it through with the hotels, work it through with my vendors, my caterers. But I think that really the key, and we can get into a little bit more detail about what that looks like and what that means to me at least. But I think the biggest change is we uphold that duty of care. We take that very seriously as professionals. We want to understand, we want to listen, we want to ask questions. We want to bridge that gap because that's us. We're that bridge between our guest and between the person serving food. And that's at all levels. That's a banquet staff, that's chef, that's your convention services manager. We are that bridge. We are that advocate for our guest. Okay. That process, I feel I have a good process. I mean, again, I might change some of the questions and the way I ask more information, but that duty of care is in a good place. Right. But that care word is what's really changed for me. My perspective on this, and you don't have to be a mom to have this, any loved one, just this is personal now for me. And I have made this, personal to an extent, but it's been business before. It's been me wanting to create as inclusive and engaging and accessible an event as I possibly can for every guest, for every event, for every situation. But I have that care component now. So the duty's been there. The care is now on fire. And I think that I'll really take more time with individuals to let them know I haven't sent much of a confirmation, a personal confirmation. I hear you. I see this. I will be on site. My team will be on site, making sure you're taken care of. I want you to know, guest, that I take this seriously and that you're important to us. And we're going to make sure you have a great experience. I think that care part's really what's going to change for me. And because I know that as a mom, I want people to take care of my baby, and I want them to know they're taken care of too.
And Heather, I love that. And I think that's the really important part of it, because we do have this duty. We run through the motions. Event planners, we have one of the top 5 most stressful jobs, along with an Army general. But it is that little sense of care. And I think all of us event planners do have that sense of care because we want to create an event experience that everybody is enjoying and doesn't get sick or doesn't pass away. But it does take that little extra duty of care. And I think that needs to come across to we need to share that care with all of our vendors who are providing the food and beverage, because we need to make them care. And I want to go back and I want to actually tie in that conversation that you had with your daughters at the grocery store this week, and so tell people what your oldest daughter was doing, with you going through the store.
Yeah. So this is still very, very new. And I think that, coming in as, an event professional, and if I were doing this for an event, I know what ingredients are in what we're serving. I'm making choices for my guests. It's a bit of a controlled atmosphere and in a place that I know and understand how to operate within. So we took I'd say our first real grocery store excursion just last night. I've been traveling a little bit for business. So, we've been getting the meat and the bread for sandwiches and chips, things that, are pretty standard. And again, we have a tree nut situation. So this is kind of what we're focusing on is tree nuts. Uh-huh. And so we went last night and we're, finding, lots of, okay, interesting fruit. Like, oh, let's get a dragon fruit. Let's get this. Well, my daughter, the little one, loves like pub mix, with like all those little goodies and stuff, like pretzels and peanuts and all these kinds of things. And so I found, I was like, oh, would you like this? And it's just peanuts in there, and my older daughter is asking me, are you sure there's no tree nuts in there, Mom? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not, because I didn't read the label. I just made an assumption based on what I could see in the package. I was about to pop this in our grocery cart. So I just was like, I should know better. I should be knowing better. You can't take it for granted. I'm reading every label now on everything. And then there's all the could contain, maybe processed with, in the same facility as. And I'm like, part of me is like, well, I mean, is there a big risk of that having pine nuts? I don't know. But I was like, you know what? We can't take any risks with this. I wouldn't take any risks like this at an event. I'm not taking any risks like this as a family. And even though we're isolated to pine nuts right now, pediatrician, allergist recommending we just avoid tree nuts because it can escalate, it can evolve. Right. So we're staying away from all of it. But it's a learning curve. But I think it's really great that they are taking this so seriously. And I think this is the real tie-in for our industry. If you set the example, if you convey to other people how important this is, if you convey how to look for things, what we're doing, why we're doing it, you lead by example. So if they weren't already, hopefully, we're all working with great professionals, but we can't take it for granted. Hopefully they'll follow your lead, your caterers, your vendors, your other guests. Right. We have to be leading by example. And I mean, I'm thinking I'm doing that because my 12-year-old is more on top of this than I am, apparently. So,
well, and to me, that's really important that your kids understand the severity. They witnessed the severity out of the blue because you knew you didn't have any clue that she was allergic to anything before. So, coming at it from that perspective, I really do, think that's awesome that the girls are really taking it seriously. And that's important. And now I want to talk about an experience that you and we shared together, 10 years ago? I don't know how many years ago, but I was working for you, managing food and beverage. And so, the question I asked you, what's a bad experience that you had? So I know this story too, because I was sitting right next to you, but you tell it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll pull in the perspective of a mom here too. So you asked that question. I said, oh, the one, the story. So we were at a awards gala. I mean, this wasn't just a casual buffet. I mean, we were at a sit down awards gala for a corporate client, and, professionals, executives in the room.
And it was employees.
Level. Yep. And, one gentleman that, we've done this for a few years, very well attuned. He has celiac. So always on top of making sure he has everything he needs. And I think did he come over to us, or he might've been sitting with us even?
But he just showed up. No, he showed up to our table. Mm-hmm.
And I am not even kidding you. And it still makes me almost physically ill to think about it to this day, because I have never experienced anything like this. There were at least 2 or 3 coworkers, his supposed friends at his place of employment, coming over, bullying him about, or what are you eating there? What are you doing? And I was like, and Tracy and I kind of leapt into protective mode. We're like, you need to leave right now. I mean, it was just, it was awful to watch. So we're taking care of people and what they eat, making sure they're having a safe experience. But oh my gosh, this is another side of managing dietary needs, the duty of care that you would never expect to experience. And I think that there is an inherent, which is awful. And this is where I think about as a mom now too, this shame, to having a need, a dietary need. And that is a barrier we all need to get on board to be breaking, because no one should feel like they can't come forward, share what their needs are, know that they're going to be taken care of with the utmost respect. But to see other people bullying this grown man, unacceptable. I mean, we were floored. We were,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, almost speechless, and we were like, okay, you guys need to leave.
Right. Yeah. And I remember going over to that table and saying, please do not come back over here.
Yes,
Because
I mean,
he got up from the table and left and came to sit with us, the staff.
That's right. Yeah.
Because
awful.
It was awful. But at that same event, I mean, like the day before, and this is a story I tell in my speeches to meeting planners as well, is that they had labeled, it was chip beef and gravy. And the front of the house staff, which is typically who does the labeling, wrote that it contained pork. And this gentleman said the same thing. I said, you do realize that gravy contains flour and milk, right? And he looks at me dead in the eye, this banquet server, and I think it was the banquet captain, said, I don't cook. How would I know that? I'm like, so he doesn't even have the duty of care, doesn't feel the duty and care. And then he took a pen and scratched it out and wrote it in. I'm like, oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
So hoteliers out there and chefs or banquet captains, I'm like, please teach your staff that this is their duty of care as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it really does. If it touches us, it touches our events.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know this is how I feel. I know this is how you feel. That buck stops with me.
Right.
I need to be managing. I mean, that's why I had you with me, because I knew I could take all of the food and beverage and know that you're going to take care of stuff like that. We can't take it for granted.
Right.
I wish we could, wish we could just say, okay, it's, passed on. They're going to make sure it happens perfectly correctly. Everything's going to be accurate, but you cannot take it for granted. And you do need to be involved at every step, and from planning to just making sure that it's done correctly. And, there's a lot of things that we can do in between to better serve that process. Right. But I think, again, like what I've been seeing with my 12-year-old and 7-year-old, if you lead by example, if you show people how important this is and that you care, they will care and they will be on board. And then you are better set up to make sure everyone's taken care of.
And Karen just reiterated that lead by example for kids and adults. It's so important. And
for adult kids, which we
are. Exactly. And Karen, it is crazy that adults bully, but they do, unfortunately. And actually it reminded me of one of our members of the Eating at a Meeting Facebook group, put out there last week or the week before saying, hey, I'm having trouble with, this hotel that I'm going to. She had sent her specs and dietary needs over a month out. And the CS convention catering services or convention services manager just kept saying, no, we can't do this, or not answering her questions until a week out. And then she's like, well, we can't do these. And then the chef comes in and says, oh, no, we're okay. We're good. And so that's that extra step that we have to take on and make sure, because a lot of times that CSM person, your contact at the hotel, doesn't let you talk to the chef.
Yeah.
And we have to get past that thing and educate them.
Yeah.
Because
and I will tell you, anytime I've had the opportunity or needed to speak with a chef, they love being a part of the process. They enjoy working with you, being creative, doing different things. So, and then I think that we're in this situation right now with labor and workforce. We are all stretched super thin.
Right.
Your CSM might be grateful to bring the chef in, so that takes things off of their plate. So absolutely. I think the more we can involve everyone in the process, the better we're going to be.
And I really do think even incorporating the chef well in advance. So, you do have allergens. Can you avoid these completely? Right? There's a way to avoid. I think on a 4-day meeting, we could avoid tree nuts altogether.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
I don't see why not.
I know facilities who are completely gluten-free. Kitchens are gluten-free, and they have amazing menus just fine. So absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's also the scary part too is like, where's that liability lie? And I know neither one of you nor I are attorneys, but and it goes down to that, hey, made in a facility with, on a packaged food. Yes, hotel, yes, convention center. We know that you're making all this other food, but that doesn't negate your duty of care to still provide a meal for this person who's requesting it. Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely possible.
It is. And just but it's making sure that you've got that information well in advance, like you said, so that they can make do the steps in the back.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what do you wish that planners knew more of about food allergies and that anaphylaxis reaction?
I think for me that it is more than a throat closing up, if, and be a part of that dinner service. I mean, I know for me with the dinner, especially a seated plated dinner, I might not be in the room the whole time. I'm probably stepping out and letting everyone enjoy, but, checking in, be alert and aware. I mean, just in the back of your mind, being attuned to everyone. Is everyone okay? Is anybody,
Right.
Not only are they enjoying themselves, are they safely enjoying themselves?
Right. And I think that's really important. Say you have 15 people who have food allergies, right? Or any other dietary. Make sure you follow up with them.
Yeah.
To make sure that they didn't go to their room, or if they've got celiac, because of some issue that they had eating something, you want to make sure that they were taken care of across the board.
And you want to make sure they know, if you're the face of that, if you're the face of food and beverage on site, they know your face, they know where they can find you. I know I've kind of done this already, introduce myself, say, hey, we got you taken care of. But again, I think that extra care of saying, I will be watching out for you.
Well, and I like that tip, because it's also, from personal experience, somebody said, well, come find somebody that works at the organization. But a lot of times the only people we see are the servers, right? And when you're told something by a server, you think that's what is what, right? And so I think it's really important that you introduce yourself to them, or who their contact should be as it relates to food and beverage.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Again, kind of going back to that, however it happened, we do have a bit of a culture of shame surrounding certain dietary needs and food allergies that has to stop. But if they know and see you sincerely saying, I am here to take care of you, they know they can come to you if they need something.
And that goes also to, and you and I have been having a couple of conversations on this. We need to make sure they feel comfortable sharing as well, right? And we need to make sure that they feel comfortable, even if that means having a conversation with the chef directly, let's open up that conversation for them so they do feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Annette just agreed with you that chefs appreciate being part of the creative, not being told what to do, right? Let's say, hey, what can you do? Right. We've got these dietary restrictions of our attendees. What can you do without these things?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, and actually that reminds me, I have it somewhere, probably on my desk somewhere in this piles. I have my card with food allergies, and it says no yeast, sugar, vinegar, dairy, peanuts, but then that was the can't have side. But then I had on the right-hand side of the form, I had my can have. Yeah. And one chef is like, this is amazing, because when you give them just the can't, they're like, the blinders come on, and I don't know what to do. You don't want me, you want me to make something without tomatoes and gluten? What do you mean? Yeah. Right.
It's got to be a dialogue. And I think this goes into kind of how we've been talking about registration. It's got to be a dialogue. It can't be just a one-sided thing, because I know there have been some needs that have come across my events where I'm like, I'm not even going to try. This is not my call to make. And one person was on a raw diet. I wish I said, how are you getting protein so I can take care of you? Because I know I'm not going to just give you carrot sticks, baby carrots and celery, and I'm not going to give you the side dish. How can I take care of you? What would you like to see on the menu for yourself? You got to reach out. It's got to be a two-way street, open that dialogue.
Well, and then just on that raw diet, you have to talk to the chef. Okay, what can you do? And what can we provide for them? And I've been given the list that's, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And I know a couple other people have too, of this is what I can't have. And I'm like, okay, but let's look up, and the chef will come back and say, what do you like to eat?
Right.
Right.
What do you make at home?
Right. What do you make at home? And let me put my spin on it with your parameters. Right. And so I think that's it's a dialogue all through all the spokes of that. Right.
And I think we may have even talked about this too, but a measure of success for me, if I've, created a special meal for somebody, is that everyone else at the table is like, oh my gosh, how did you get that meal? That it's like an actual meal, not just again, the side dishes or the without the sauce. Like you're actually creating a meal for someone.
Right. Exactly. And not to bash what you just said, but I don't really like the word special anymore when we're talking about that, because even if it's somebody who's utilizes a wheelchair, it's not a special need. It's just my need. Yeah. And actually somebody I read somewhere said the need is actually that we need to eat.
Yeah.
And so I just need to eat a different way. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I like the term personalized plates for people because it is personalized for me because of that happening. Yeah. So when you're looking at hotels, when you're going to source a hotel, not just the registration aspect of it, what questions do you think are now going to come out, that you're adding to your list of questions for a property?
Well, I think that's a tough question right now because there's a lot of turnaround. So I can't rely on the booking window time period to know that my needs are going to be met. It's worth saying what is your culture of accommodation, and maybe if that's, important to you, speaking with the chef at the beginning before you book. So you're very comfortable with that process, but knowing because of this, climate that we're in right now, that might not be the person you end up working with. So there are touch points throughout the planning process that you need to follow to make sure that when you get on site, when you're ultimately there serving your guests, they're accommodated safely, inclusively, in a way that allows them to enjoy absolutely every part of the event.
That's a really good point because I actually posted a story or an article yesterday of like hotel loses chef or hotel and chef separate ways because chef wanted to go vegan or plant-based. And you can't, if you're booking an event 4 years out, that property can't tell you who the chef is going to be then or what their capabilities are. So it is a tough question to have. Mm-hmm. But I do like the question of what's your culture of accommodation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Set that high level tone at first that this is important to me. Mm-hmm. It's going to be important to me throughout the planning process and when we're on site. And, we'll stay in touch throughout the planning process to ensure that we're moving in that right direction.
And I don't know why this just popped into my head, but you did say there was training, and I want everybody to know, and I'm kind of jumping back to the anaphylaxis thing. You can go to the American Red Cross has training that is online that I think just like having CPR training that all meeting planners should take.
Yeah, I agree because it's not what you think, and seeing it is not what you think. And the more that we can prepare ourselves to take care of the unexpected, we spend a lot of time like, what if the bus doesn't come? What if the flight's late? What if the luggage isn't there? What if the room's not ready? This is so important. And the more training we can get, the more that we can be confident in a situation to be able to react. I will tell you, I don't know if I would have reacted the same way if, dietary needs and food allergies isn't a part of, my life on a daily basis outside of my family. Mm-hmm. But I was like, we're there. We're going to the ER,
Yeah. And I want to let's talk on that too, is because when you're at a venue, right, you need to be asking, hey, what's your emergency response? And do you actually have epinephrine on site?
Absolutely. So that should definitely be a part of, regardless, your duty of care, risk management, crisis management, it comes under a lot of names, plan, understanding if there's an incident, what's the response time? Where's it coming from? Mm-hmm. Las Vegas, for example, most casinos and resorts have on-site in-house EMTs because of, other reasons mostly, but to our advantage there, because I have had an incident on site at a meal. So, but knowing their response time, because those venues are pretty big, the response time might be the same as coming from a hospital at another resort. So knowing where they're coming from, what's the response time is, and who on site can administer epinephrine, who on site has access to, all the things and can take over in case of an emergency. Who do I call and who will pick up? It's not your CSM. They might not pick. Who do I call? And they are going to pick up right away and respond immediately. And what's that response time?
That's a really good point. And last week on the show, Zach Marks, who is the CEO of Kit Medical, and he's really working in the UK right now, but he said in his research, he's like, kids are running from their classrooms to the nurse's office to get their epinephrine. And that's not what should happen. You should actually stay put, and the emergency medical should come to you, because you don't want to elevate any of your systems.
Pressure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly. Stressing out because I'm having a reaction. But then that also goes to know, okay, you tell me you have a food allergy. Do you carry epinephrine?
Yeah.
And that's actually, to me, really important for a diabetic as well.
Mhm.
Understanding, do you carry insulin?
Absolutely.
What do we need to know? And there's a fine line with HIPAA, I get, but we need to be able to communicate if you're unable with the EMT.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're part of that duty of care line, as far as HIPAA and things like that, if we disclose why we're asking for this information and what we're going to do with it and how we will protect it, that it's in the best interest of that guest, we have their permission to collect that information and, be using it responsibly and removing it from existence as soon as the event's over. And, but yeah, the more we know, with a type 1 diabetic, and it is somebody else monitoring their insulin too, like and I know we've talked about this, emergency contact information along with dietary needs. Your dietary needs report should always be on you at all times in paper, as a matter of just absolute policy, so that you can make sure that person gets the care they need if they need to.
Right. Exactly. This is such an important question. We could talk about it, or topic. We can talk about it for ages. And as I mentioned, you and I are working on a course on a registration on how best to collect the information and report it out to make our jobs as meeting professionals easier across the board. So thank you.
Hoping that everyone can learn, take our experiences and utilize it. These lessons that have been hard earned.
And it makes me sad that you're sharing this, having to share this knowledge based on your personal experience. So I wish well for your daughter and you and your husband and your other daughter as well, because it is very scary. And as Brian, he witnessed his son dying, and that's not what we want. We don't want anybody at our events to die from a food allergy reaction. So yeah.
I mean, to the extreme, absolutely. We are there to take care of those individuals. On the other side of that, we're there to make sure that they have a great experience. Yeah,
exactly. All right. So before I forget, describe to me, based on this and everything that you do, what does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive experience mean to you?
So I'll answer those individually. So safety is what it is. You're giving people an opportunity to tell you what will create a safe experience for them. You are communicating that, and you are seeing it through. So you are involved in all of those phases. You or team member, if you have somebody else managing it for you, you still need to do the job of confirming that it's been done. You cannot take it for granted. Sustainable means it can exist in the long term, in the long run. You're not creating these ad hoc solutions here and there, that what you're doing, and that goes for practices, sustainable sourcing, sustainable labor. All of these things are part of the sustainability conversation. So what you're doing needs to be with that long-term vision in mind, that what I'm doing now is something that we will be able to keep going in the long run. Okay. To protect our resources, protect, all of those things. And then inclusive, you're not just putting out a buffet and saying, oh, sorry, we don't have any dairy-free options for you today. This is it. This is what it is. That you are taking the time. And if you're concerned about workload, which is a big concern right now, we're not discounting that. But if you're concerned about that, it does not take that much time to make sure everyone is taken care of, to meet individuals, how they're coming to you, to communicate to them that you care, that you're taking care of them, and that when they come to you and they come to your event, their experience, personalized or part of the group, their experience is going to include an understanding of their needs and an accommodation of their needs, so that they don't have to worry about a thing. Don't feel like they're going to be bullied. Don't feel like they're going to be isolated. Don't feel like they're going to have, all of this undue attention, that they're just going to enjoy the experience and be taken care of.
Oh, I love all three of those responses. Thank you. All right. And we also, they need to feel comfortable being able to come to our event, right?
Absolutely.
And being able to disclose it. So that Karen just posted this on here. Is there any reason these ingredients can't be avoided as a rule? Someone without food sensitivities or who isn't vegan doesn't need nuts or cheese. Karen, absolutely. Right on the mark. Yes. Yeah.
Great point too. If there is something that is really of concern, like I've had events where somebody couldn't even be in the same room as shellfish, I'm like, off the menu, done. Right. I'm making sure the hotel is not serving shellfish that day for other groups. there is absolutely no reason you cannot take that extra step.
Yes, 100% agree. And gluten might be one of the biggest challenges in trying to remove that from every single thing that you do, but having bread or something there like that. But I think 100% you can avoid a majority of the top 9 allergens pretty easily. I'm going to say probably wheat, milk, and eggs would be the hardest to completely eliminate it out of the top 9, but it is to me doable.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And you just have to have that conversation with the chef up front. Yeah. So Heather Herrig, thank you so much. I so appreciate you being here. Everybody, you can connect with Heather via LinkedIn, or you can check her out. I'm going to put her website address here in the chat as well. It is, Heather, while I'm putting it up there, tell them how they can get a hold of you.
You can, LinkedIn is great. I'm on Facebook too. If you search for me or my business, Every Last Detail, or eldevents.net is my website. It's very basic. I like to network. That's mostly how I like to meet people and do business. So don't judge, but come find me personally, because that's how I operate the best, in person.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And again, everybody, the really, really important information to know as somebody who's hosting, what that question about dietary needs, why that question is so important. So Heather, thank you for sharing your story, and tell your daughter, thank you for allowing you to share her story.
I will. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share this, because I think the more perspectives that we have allows us all to better take care of the guests that we love and hold dear at our events.
Thank you. Until next time, stay safe and eat well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.